Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. It's Chala from PS I Love You. Thank you so much for joining me today. We are hopping along with Scrap and Stamp Canada to their Poignant Poppies blog hop. Let's get started. I am using this great Pretty Poppies set from Lawn Fawn. It's a beautiful die cut set, and we have some great poppy shapes here, some leaves, some inner pieces. So let's get started. I've gone ahead and die cut out two of each of the different sizes of poppies because you need two of them for each poppy. And I'm using some aged mahogany distress ink here just to give them more texture and depth. So I've got my picket fence life-changing blender brushes, and I'm just adding some of that distress ink to the edges of the poppies just to deepen them up a bit and give them a little bit more depth and dimension. And so you have two sizes in the set, which is really great. So it makes a smaller poppy and a larger poppy. So when you go to die cut these out, like I said before, you're going to use, you're going to die cut two of each to make sure that you can create the poppy itself. Now I've gone ahead also and used a Copic marker to do some shading. So if you don't have distress inks or you want to do Copic markers or your Spectrum Noir markers, you can go ahead and do that as well. I just wanted to show you the two different looks that you can get and how you can add dimension to your die cuts by either using ink or markers. So again, I really like this. So when you have your two pieces, once you have all the marker ink on them that you want, we can go ahead and put them together. Now I'm also using some ink to darken up and give texture to the leaves as well. So I'll go ahead and do it with the distress ink and as well with the Copic marker to show you that you can do it with both, whatever you prefer. I'll list all the materials over on my blogs, so make sure you go ahead and check that out if you're looking for anything specific that I'm using today. So again, just bringing in that ink to the edges of these leaves. I'm using the Wendy Vecchi Make Art Station. I really like this for when I'm doing some ink blending because, as you can see here, I'm using that magnetic ruler to hold down the edges of my project. There's also the bigger magnets that come with it. I like how it cleans off easily, so it's just, yeah, it's a really great tool. I'm bringing in that Copic marker and again just adding flicks of color to the edges of the leaves, just again to give it a little bit more contouring and dimension to the project. And then once you have everything colored that you like, we will go ahead and start putting everything together. I really like poppies. I think they're one of my favorite flowers that we have, and this year I was excited to plant some of the poppies with my daughter, and I was very pleasantly surprised that they grew. So yeah, I really enjoy poppies. I've pulled out my Gina K Connect glue, and unfortunately it's running out. I'll have to get some more, and I'm just layering these two pieces on top of each other and then adhering it with the glue. And then I've die cut some of the centers, the two center pieces, out of black cardstock, nothing really special there, and then just gluing it down with that Connect glue. I recommend getting your reversible tweezers out for this because some of the pieces are a bit dainty and it's just a little bit easier to adhere them down with those tweezers. What I like about this die set is you can cut these out and do the pieces flush, or you can actually bend up these little stamen pieces or bend up the petals just to give it more of a realistic look, and I like that in die cuts, that you can, you know, alter them. You can also fold them over and make it look like the poppy is kind of folded in half and that you're looking at it from the side. So I really like that, and when you add that leaf, I think it looks really quite classy. Here's the one that I did with the Copic markers, and I'm just going to glue those pieces together. I'm again running out of glue. And then how I like to line these up to get it even is the die cut itself has a little bit of a stitch line in it. So I try to line up the middle stitch line of the one poppy to the cutout of the one that I'm laying on top. That really doesn't make sense, but I'll show you here in a minute what I'm talking about. This one you can see I'm just kind of folding up some of those stamen just to give them a little bit more dimension and make it a little bit more of a 3D card. And then just adhering that down with that Gina K Connect glue with my reversible tweezers. And then you can see once I pull in these leaves how that looks. So that one is the Copic colored one. Alright, as I was trying to show you before, there's these little stitch lines here, and I line those up with the groove to the one that I'm laying on top. I hope that makes sense. I hope you can see what I was trying to show you there, and that's just how I kind of line them up to get a perfect looking flower. So I've pulled out some distress inks in this kind of yellows and orange tones. Again, I'll link all the colors I use over on my blog, so check that out. I'm using just a typical Ranger blending tool here, nothing fancy. I'm just laying the colors down and blending them together to create, was trying to go for a gradient look. It ended up not being that, but that's okay. I like how it turned out. I was originally trying to orient this card to be a portrait style card, and then I decided once I was laying everything out that it worked better for me to do it in horizontal or landscape, so you'll see that as well. So just doing some really quick blending. I've sped that process up so you don't have to sit here. I did bring in a fourth color just to darken up some of those areas. It was just too light for me. I wanted more of a bit more orange tone, so I did bring that fourth color in. And then just blending it until I get the look I like. So now I'm laying out my poppies just to figure out where I want everything placed. And I just did 3 poppies for this one, and 2 of the larger ones and 1 of the smaller one. I think they look really great. I like the yellow background. But once I start laying everything out here, I quickly realized that the sentiment that I wanted to use did not fit. I wanted to use that Thinking of You sentiment from a Concord and Ninth, and this is the, what is that one? I think it's the Beautiful Blossoms one. I'll link to it though, again, over at my blog there, so check that out. But I liked how everything fit better on the landscape. So once I've got everything laid out, I do bring in my powder tool because distress ink tends to stay a bit wet longer, and I want to do some heat embossing, so I'll hit that with my powder tool here to make sure that the embossing doesn't go all over the place and stick. I will stamp it down with my favorite sentiment ink here, and that's the VersaFine Clair. It just always seems to give me a nice solid impression every time I use it. I'll ink that up using my Stamp Perfect here and stamp that down, and then I'll quickly bring in some clear embossing powder and sprinkle that over top of that wet ink. And then we're just going to flick off any excess powder, and then we'll go ahead and heat set that. Now, I didn't let my heat tool heat up enough when I started here, so I end up getting a bit of warping, so that's why I'm going from front to back of this card panel here, as I'm trying to minimize that warping. I do run it through my Gemini Junior with a die cut frame, which helps flatten it out, so it wasn't a big deal at the end of the day. But if you want to minimize warping, make sure that your heat tool is good and hot before you bring it to your project. Alright, now I can bring all my pieces back in and start laying them out. And I did want to add a little bit something extra here to these poppies. I did add white gel pen, some little details, some dots on the centers. I really think that, again, brings out the look of the poppy and gives it a little bit more dimension just by simply adding that gel pen. You could also, again, bring your inks out and darken up the black with some maybe black soot distress ink, if that works for you as well. I just ended up leaving them plain this time. And then just trying to figure out how I want my leaves placed. I want to do quite a bit of layering with all these pieces. I want it to look you know, more realistic in terms of how these flowers appear in nature. And So I wanted to add different layers, and I kind of go crazy with the glue here. I used way too much, and when I ran it through my die cut machine later, some of the glue squished out because I didn't let it dry 100%. So make sure that, you know, if you're going to do that, let your glue dry. And I don't know why I used so much. I was just going glue crazy, I guess. So I've laid these down, and I've got my last little poppy here, and I want to pop him up on some foam tape. So I was going to put my block on and walk away and leave it, but I was running short on time, and you can see at the top there I did get a little bit of glue squished out when I ran it through. But as you can see, I've used my my favorite things, wonky stitch die, border die. That's my favorite. I use it quite a bit. I'm just trimming off some of the overhanging pieces of those leaves off my card. And I'll end up layering more on as well. I wanted some of them to be cut flush with that first panel, and then some to overhang over top of the card that you see here. So you can see on the edges there that they overhang to the full size of that A2 size card. And then the poppies themselves were cut to the frame there. So, and then there's that little glue mishap, but that's okay. It's not 100% noticeable, and I will camouflage it a bit with some Nuvo drops in a minute here. So applying that adhesive foam piece there just to pop up this smaller poppy, and again you can play around with the petals and curl them a bit. You can curl them with a pen or pencil. You can use a embossing tool to roll them up a bit. I just use my fingers and then just, you know, pushing it down here. And then I'll go ahead and add a few more of these leaves. And then I wanted to, again, lots of layering is what I really wanted to work with here, covering some of the flowers because you wouldn't see the flowers perfectly out in nature, making sure I glue everything down. And I like how that one leaf is in between the petals of the one poppy on the lower left hand side there. I like how that looked. Using these new Nuvo crystal drops, they're the sparkle drops, and I really like this. I think these are going to be great for Christmas cards, and I wanted to test them out how they would look on the yellow. So just my scratch pad here, and I like how it looks on that yellow background. So holding your bottle straight up and down is the key to adding Nuvo drops to any project, and then squirting it out and then doing kind of the swirl. Like I call it the Dairy Queen swirl. It helps get that nice circle to it without that little Hershey Kiss top. You don't want that little Hershey Kiss top on it. And then what I do is once I've put the Nuvo drops on, I will actually tap the card onto my work surface here just to settle it and get any air bubbles out, and then I'll put that aside to dry completely, and that finishes my card off for today. Here is another one we can do. I want to use this one for a wreath with my kids. I think that would look really nice. Here's a close-up, and you can see that ink blending, how that kind of really richens up the look of this die cut. And those Nuvo drops, the sparkling drops there, they're gorgeous. They're really beautiful and sparkly, and I can't wait to use them on my Christmas cards. I want to thank you guys so much for joining me today. Remember to hop along with all the design team members. They've got some beautiful poppy creations. They're just so inspiring. And remember to head over to the Facebook page to share your creations as well. That's the Scrap and Stamp Facebook page. I'll link that on my blog. Enjoy your day, guys, and until next time, take care.